Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Teniola Shobowale. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says coronavirus restrictions will ease further in England under plans for a significant return to normality by Christmas. Under the new guidelines, people may use public transport for journeys immediately, while advice for employers will change from August the 1st. The Prime Minister explains that companies will now have more discretion to bring staff back to workplaces if it's safe to do so.
Unveiling the next steps in the easing of England's COVID-19 restrictions, certain businesses, leisure settings, indoor performances and sports stadiums have been given the green light to start welcoming people back in the coming months. Announcing the plans, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says his government is hoping for the best, but planning for the worst.
Throughout this period, we will look to allow more close contact between friends and family where we can. It is my strong and sincere hope that we will be able to review the outstanding restrictions and allow a more significant return to normality from November at the earliest, possibly in time for Christmas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'd like to make a statement.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Matt Hancock has called for an urgent review into the compilation of the coronavirus deaths data in England. It comes after it was confirmed that the number of reported deaths included people who had tested positive months before they died.
For weddings and corporate events.
Away from the UK, Australia's New South Wales state has banned dancing, singing and mingling at large-scale gatherings as neighbouring Victoria reported a record daily increase in COVID-19 cases.
Hold on.
In other developments, researchers in the country have devised a test that can determine the coronavirus infection in about 20 minutes using blood samples. The test can determine if someone is currently infected and if they have been infected in the past. And in the United States, the daily total of new cases has hit another record with 68,428 new infections in 24 hours. In that period, the death toll also climbed to 974. Meanwhile, in Texas and Arizona, morgues are filling up and officials are bringing in coolers and refrigerated trailers to store bodies.
This is a morbid topic, and it's not one that we enjoy talking about, but it really does underscore the severity of COVID-19 in our community.
Other countries are also struggling with spikes as well. Brazil has surpassed 2 million cases of the virus raging through Latin America, and India has become the third country to top 1 million cases.
Well, let's take a look better at the situation in India. India added a record number of COVID-19 cases, nearly 35,000 in the last 24 hours, breaching the 1 million mark. It has the world's third largest caseload after the US and Brazil, the only three countries so far to record more than 1 million coronavirus cases. India's active cases account for about a third of its total tally, as it has been reporting a high recovery rate and a low death rate from the virus. Meanwhile, doctors at India's largest hospital treating coronavirus patients say they are prepared for a second wave of the virus. VOA's correspondent Anjana Parishcha is in New Delhi. She now joins us for more on the situation in India. Anjana, thanks for joining us on the program.
Hello, how are you?
1 million cases, a grim milestone. How did India get here?
Well, India actually appeared to be escaping the worst of the virus after imposing a strict lockdown in late March. But virologists had always warned that in a country of densely packed cities and, these sprawling urban slums, where social distancing is actually really impossible, the virus will hit like an avalanche. And that is what happened when markets and businesses started opening up in June. In recent weeks, the number of cases has been hitting absolutely record high numbers daily. Nearly half the 1 million cases have been added in the last fortnight. This, of course, is also partly due to the fact that testing has been ramped up, so more cases are being detected.
But the best news for India when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic is the unusually low death rate. What are authorities attributing this low rate to?
Yes. Yes, India's death rate has been less than 3%, which is, of course, much lower than in many Western countries. Now, authorities, of course, are happy about this. They haven't given any reasons, but health experts have. There are different theories. One is that India is a young country. Most of the population is under 35. So, unlike countries like Italy or Britain, many of the patients are younger and do not have the comorbidities that often lead to death. There also have been some suggestions that there is a less virulent strain of the virus in India. I personally know of people who only had fever for 2 or 3 days and recovered very quickly. Science, I think, does not have a clear-cut answer yet. But of course, as you mentioned yourself, besides the mortality rate, the recovery rate is also fairly good. About 2/3 of the 1 million people have recovered.
But when you see that 1 million people have been infected with the virus, some experts say figures are actually being underreported, mostly because of low testing. How well is India doing in terms of testing, and are there plans to scale this up?
Yes, India probably has many more infections than have been officially recorded. And that is, of course, as you say, because of the low testing. Now, testing has been ramped up since January, when India had only one laboratory. Now there are 1,200. And efforts are on to scale it up hugely. We found this true in the capital, New Delhi, where cases, shot up dramatically in June after testing was ramped up. Efforts are on to do this, and I think testing has improved. There are about 300,000 tests being done daily now.
Anjana, there's been talks of a second wave set to hit India. Is the country prepared for this?
Well, virologists tell us that India is still in the thick of the first wave, that we will not even hit the peak until sometime in August. And even after that, the numbers will go down very, very slowly. So we could still see a lot of cases until early next year. What is actually happening is that India is a huge country. So different places are seeing surges at different times. First, we saw a lot of cases in the west of the country. Then we saw them in Delhi in the north. And now southern states seem to be spiking. As for being prepared, no. I think the country was not even prepared for the first wave. The 10-week lockdown, critics say, was not used effectively to add enough facilities. And there are numerous reports of patients scrambling for beds and hospitals struggling with lack of equipment and medical staff.
Let's talk about, the lockdown and with cases crossing the 1 million mark. Are we expecting more regions to reimpose lockdowns?
Absolutely. That is what various states have been doing, because state authorities have been given the power to decide themselves. So as different places see surges, they tend to impose a lockdown. The latest one is in the information technology hub of Bangalore, which saw a huge spike in the last 10 days. And then there were reports that hospitals were really struggling to cope. The state of Bihar, a very sprawling, huge state in the east of the country, has also gone into lockdown till the end of this month. But I have to say, these are coming at an enormous cost. Millions of jobs have been lost. The economy is expected to go into negative territory. And many experts say that India simply cannot afford more lockdowns. It will have to learn to cope with the virus simultaneously while opening up the economy.
All right, then, Anjana, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on the situation in India. Thanks once again, and do stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Elsewhere in Asia, a Bangladeshi doctor accused of involvement in a scheme that entails falsifying thousands of COVID-19 test results for patients has appeared at a Dhaka court. Sabrina Chowdhury, chairman of JKG Healthcare, was handed a 2-day pre-trial detention by the court. Chowdhury and several other suspects have been detained in connection with the fake testing ring. The owner of the 2 hospitals where the tests were given, Mohammed Shahid, was arrested on Wednesday after a 9-day manhunt when he was caught at a border river trying to flee to India. Now, EU leaders are meeting in their first face-to-face summit since the coronavirus pandemic to discuss a post-COVID stimulus package. The 27 leaders, all masked up, greeted each other with elbow bumps rather than their usual cheek kisses and handshakes. And there were birthday gifts for German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa. French President Emmanuel Macron said the meeting is a moment of truth for Europe. There are splits between leaders over whether the post-COVID package should be given as grants or loans. Mr. Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel want grants to mostly finance the fund, while four northern nations insist on loans. While European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says a deal on EU's economic recovery stimulus is possible, warning the stakes could not be higher for the bloc.
We are at the beginning of the summit now, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If we do it right, we can overcome this crisis stronger and emerge stronger from the crisis. All the necessary pieces are on the table, and a solution is possible. And the solution, that is what our people in Europe expect from us, because it's their jobs that are at stake. And the risk of the virus still persists. And the whole world is watching us, whether Europe is able to stand up united and to overcome this corona-related crisis strongly. With a convincing European budget, with Next Generation EU, we have the chance not only to overcome the crisis, but also to modernize our single market and our union, to bring forward the European Green Deal and the digitalization. And therefore, this day today is of utmost importance.
So other stories now. Russia plans to produce 30 million doses of an experimental COVID-19 vaccine domestically this year, with the potential to manufacture a further 170 million abroad. The first human trial of the vaccine, a month-long test on 38 people, ended this week. Researchers concluded that it's safe for use and induces an immune response, though the strength of that response is as yet unclear. A larger phase 3 trial involving several thousand people is expected to begin in August. More than 100 possible vaccines are being developed to try to stop the pandemic. According to the World Health Organization, at least 2 are in final phase 3 human trials.
Expect phase 2 to finish around August 3rd. So Gamaleya vaccine is showing very strong results. For phase 3, we'll have several thousand people, and not only in Russia, but we'll also have clinical trials in several other countries. And RDIF is in discussions with several of the leading Middle Eastern nations and some other to have clinical trials there. We see very strong immune response based on the Russian Gamaleya vaccine, and those results and the results of clinical trials are very, very positive. We will produce around 30 million vaccines in Russia this year. We are working with 2 of our portfolio companies, Airfarm and Allium, to produce those vaccines. Personally, had vaccine injected. I had 5.5 level of antibodies after around 20 days of the first injection. And after the second injection, my level increased above 10 for IgG. For comparison, actually, people who've been very sick, they have level on average around 6. And you can actually donate plasma if your level is higher than 6. So now, having been vaccinated, I can actually donate plasma that will help other people who have COVID.
South Korea has approved an early-stage clinical trial of Celltrion's experimental COVID-19 treatment drug, making it the country's first antibody candidate being tested on humans. Drug makers worldwide are scrambling to develop treatments for the flu-like illness caused by the novel coronavirus that has infected nearly 14 million people and killed more than 580,000 globally. Celltrion's candidate is an antibody treatment directed against the spike-shaped protein structures of the virus and designed to block it from locking onto human cells, thus neutralizing the virus. Celtrion plans to enroll 32 healthy volunteers in collaboration with a local hospital for phase 1 study of the drug, which demonstrated an up to 100-fold reduction in viral load in animal tests. In the United States, Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp is urging people in the state to wear masks for 4 weeks to halt the spread of the coronavirus, but refuses to back down on his position, banning state and local authorities from mandating the wearing of masks. With the state experiencing a spike in COVID-19 infections, Kemp issued an executive order on Wednesday suspending local regulations requiring masks, then sued the city of Atlanta on Thursday to stop it from enforcing its mask mandate. The state's lawsuit alleges Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms lacked the authority to require masks and contended she must follow Kemp's executive orders.
Today, I'm encouraging all Georgians from every corner of the state to do 4 things for 4 weeks. 1, wear a mask when out in public or when you cannot distance yourself inside. Now, I know that many well-intentioned and well-informed Georgians want a mask mandate. And while we all agree that wearing a mask is effective, I'm confident that Georgians don't need a mandate to do the right thing. Mayor Bottom's mask mandate cannot be enforced, but her decision to shutter businesses and undermine economic growth is devastating. Atlanta businesses are hurting, violent crime is up, and families are rightfully worried.
And away from the COVID-19 pandemic, Beijing says any travel ban imposed by the United States against members of China's ruling Communist Party would be absurd, and such a move would amount to Washington standing in opposition to the entire population of China. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman says no country or individual could stop China from developing along a socialist path with Chinese characteristics after being asked about a potential travel ban. The Trump administration is reportedly considering banning travel to the United States by all members of the Chinese Communist parties and their families. Such a ban, if implemented, could hit the ruling Communist Party from the highest levels down to its rank and file, and would be certain to draw retaliation against Americans who travel to China. This includes diplomats, but also business executives, potentially harming U.S. interests in China. After torrential rain hit various places in southwest China, local authorities, firefighters and the local Chinese armed police force soldiers have been actively evacuating trapped residents and conducting flood relief work. The fire department in Kaiju district received an alarm that a pedestrian bridge was damaged by floods in Donghao. The firefighters immediately mobilized staff to conduct rescue work. Many places in the region were battered by torrential rain since Wednesday night. The river surface is expanded to about 7 to 8 meters, trapping an elderly and a child who wanted to go to their relatives' homes as a landslide occurred near the back of their houses. Upon arrival at the site, the firefighters intended to use metal ladders to rescue the trapped villagers, yet it was as dangerous as the river was turbulent. After on-site investigation, the firefighters decided to set up a rope bridge to save the villagers. After almost 1 hour, the elderly and the child were brought to safety at around 8 p.m. Now, flash floods and landslides have killed at least 30 people on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi and left hundreds displaced. Rescuers are continuing to search for victims amongst mud and debris in North Luwu district amid reports of several people missing. The flash flood struck the North Luwu district of South Sulawesi province after heavy rain on Monday. There caused the 3 nearby rivers to burst. More than 4,000 residents were affected. Indonesia frequently suffers from floods and landslides, especially during the rainy season, though the situation is often made worse by the cutting down of forests. Some positive news now. Captain Tom Moore, the World War II veteran who won the hearts of the UK public when he raised more than £32 million for NHS charities, has officially become Sir Tom. In a special ceremony at Windsor Castle, just for him, Sir Tom was knighted by the Queen, her first official engagement in person since lockdown. Sir Tom was being recognised for walking more than 100 laps of his garden to raise money for NHS charities. Earlier, Sir Tom, who celebrated his 100th birthday during lockdown, tweeted that it was the most special day of his life. The Queen was overheard as telling him that 100 is a great age. She also told Sir Tom that thank you so much for the amazing amount of money he raised.
Do you want to put this arm down, Tom? That'll be more comfortable. Yeah.
Some more good news now as well. Britain's Princess Beatrice has married property tycoon Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi at a private ceremony in Windsor. The wedding took place at the Royal Chapel of All Saints at Royal Lodge. It was attended by the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, along with other close relatives. Beatrice was initially due to marry in May, but coronavirus delayed the plans. The newlyweds are not the only couple celebrating today, though. There's been some good news from Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who announced wedding receptions of up to 30 people would be allowed to take place in England from August the 1st. Congratulations to the newlyweds. And that's the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.